Welcome to Call Your Hits, a Storm Riders Airsoft podcast. Thanks for joining us, everyone. My guest today is Nick, also known as Suiting Colt, one of our Discord moderators. Nick is an airsofter from the southern United States, and we talked to him back in 2022, along with Chaz and Sam, about their experiences at American Milsim's Operation Copperhead 7. This time, Nick is here to talk to us about another AMS event, Reindeer Games 21. And actually, given the timing of this episode right before Christmas, it's the timing is apt. So, Reindeer Games was held in Killeen, Texas, in early December of 2023, and it follows a lot of the same sort of standard lore that you see from AMS events. So, cost versus UFS, which you've heard us talk a lot about on the podcast in the past. But the format for this game was a little bit different, and I think my understanding is they tried a couple of new things. So I'm really excited to have Nick on to talk to us about that today and talk about his experience. So Nick, thanks for being on, man.
Thanks for having me on. Excited to talk about the event.
Yeah. So what in particular drew you to Reindeer Games? And is there any Christmas theme aside from the name during the game?
I believe originally when that event was first held, there was a Toys for Tots component to it. So bringing toys to donate for kids. And then eventually it's just become a December AMS game. So there wasn't any Christmas theme, although at one point there was someone dressed up as camo Santa Claus on cost. I believe it was one of the admins who was playing just for fun, but no main theme, Christmas theme to it this year.
Right on. So what's the main sort of setup for the event? It's a 2-day event, right?
Right. So for normal AMS events, you have your main component on Saturday, and that runs about 10 to 12 hours. And then Sunday, it's about 4 hours. So that can vary depending on the event and also what time of year it's hosted. Trying to balance out how much daylight there is and also have some of a night component. So this one started at about 11:15, I believe, and was slated to end around 9:15.
Okay.
But ended a little bit earlier than that.
All right. And was there the 9:15? Does that include the night component? Because I guess
yes,
the sunset's probably around what, like 6:30, 7 p.m.
I believe sunset was starting around like 4:55, 5 o'clock.
Okay, yeah.
So about 4 hours was dark, and it did get pretty dark immediately as soon as sunset, because the moonlight didn't hit until about 10. So no moonlight, pitch black, lots of stumbling around in the dark if you didn't have night vision or a flashlight.
Fair enough, and we'll get to that. So did you do you go to the event with your teammates?
Yes, so we went with 4 of our guys, Safety Kill, Airsoft. It's a little based in Texas team. And we picked the event and going there because we had never been before, even though we've mostly played in Texas. And it was just our second event of the year. So we all wanted to go something close after doing a bunch of logistically challenging ops. So this one was right in our backyard.
Okay. And this was held in Killeen, Texas, which I think is not far from Waco. Was this on like a military site, or how was it organized?
Yes, so it's on Fort Cavazos, formerly known as Fort Hood, and it's using 2 of the mount sites at that facility. Usually AMS has trouble renting both, from what I've been told, but this time we got to rent both the Boaz site and the Elijah site, and they're right next to each other with some woods in between, and that was a really large play area for this event. Usually there's only one of the sites, much smaller. This time we got really lucky with how the military base was allowing us to use it.
Cool. So what was your, I guess, what were your deployment orders? Like, what was the order of the day for you and your teammates?
So we were on the cost side, and we were going up against the Sierra Dynamics, which is one of the other smaller factions. So we didn't go up against UFS. I'm not sure as to why. I believe there's a lore reason for it, or maybe a logistics reason. But We started off on the south end of the field at a fob that was about 200, 300 yards from the Elijah site, and Sierra Dynamics started near the Boaz site to the north. So I'm not too big of a fan on the AMS lore, and I'm not too well read up on it, so I'm not sure why Cost and Sierra Dynamics were fighting, even though at Iron Horse they're usually on the same side. So probably some bickering between the factions in the lore.
Sure, but just like Sam told us many years ago, he's not here for the lore, and neither are you clearly. So that's all
Oh yeah,
good.
we're just there to have fun. It's a city environment. Do some
Hmm.
close quarters BB wars.
Yeah. So what was I guess for the majority of the day, was it just like area control, or did you get assigned missions, or how was that proceeding?
So at the start, our platoon lead had us assigned to do just a mad rush out the start, and we were slated to do a 750 meter run to try and secure this one berm. We didn't make it all the way. We made it to one of the control points that we were supposed to capture and then move on. Um, I mean, that was a lot of running, and cardio is not my strong suit, but we tried our best to get that far. But for the most part, it was trying to get a foothold in the city, hold it, and then smaller squads were tasked with securing SAM sites or various intel and other items that are on the field. You just radio it in and bring it back. So,
Hmm.
uh, and also there were aid stations on this particular event. They aren't at every single event, but aid stations are like a place where you can take off one of your bandages and get back in the game. That's like a forward deployable area that doesn't
Okay.
move and it's capturable. So SD held it most of the day Saturday, and then we took them back later into the day. And those were a vital asset that we tried to hold on to and capture. But for the most part, the early part of this day, for us, it was try and take this one berm. And then once we got absolutely demolished there, we went back, reloaded, and tried to just make sure we had a foothold in the city.
Right. And what was the lead up with you and your teammates for this event? Like, how did you prepare, and sort of how did that shake out once you hit the field?
So usually for any event, we'll try and look at old footage and just get a sense for the AO if we haven't been there before, and a sense for what the play is actually like. If there's a lot of woods, if there's a lot of city, and that kind of helps us tailor like, all right, what's our plan going into this? How do we want to break up our squad? Do we want to go as like one bigger fire team, one squad, or break it up into smaller fire teams? So we'll usually tailor kind of our SOPs to whether or not it's a more urban event or a more out in the woods event. But we had done Iron Horse earlier this year, so we had gotten a lot more reps with clearing buildings and doing that kind of CQB thing that we really enjoy. And then also just lots of practice for the guys who are back in Texas. Since I'm not there, they were able to meet in person and just go over trying to get the reps on room clearing and how do you move between buildings. That was really key for this event, and also Iron Horse. But this event, the buildings are a bit closer together in many ways. So how do you
Hmm.
move between buildings? Or are you checking up on the windows above you? There's basements that have windows. It was very much like everyone. We need to keep our eyes out, eyes open, and then just don't stay out in the open. So a lot of trying to practice that and um, really trying to keep it in our head. Just don't stay out in the open, because at this facility, you will absolutely die. There's so many windows and holes that you'll get shot from.
Right.
Um,
So it's interesting though to hear you talk about, like, getting the reps in and like practicing and stuff, because I think, you know, there is a perhaps, and maybe this is a misconception on my part, but like there's an understanding that, okay, well, you need to practice all the time. Like, if you're going to be good at CQB, like you need to do so much practicing. And to be honest, you look at like real world, like SWAT teams, for example, like that's all they practice over and over and over. But it seems to me like the stakes are much higher for them than they are for us, right? So
oh,
the
right,
necessity,
absolutely.
right? The necessity for them to practice is there. So for you and your teammates, like how often are you practicing, and how effective how you have you found that that's been?
It really depends on everyone's just work situations or life situations is that I'm sure most of my guys would like to go out and do more of our kind of team days where we'll get together and practice stuff and have a bunch of fun out at
Hmm.
one of my team members' property. But this year we didn't get that many opportunities, and since I'm not in Texas, it's very difficult for me to go out and do it. So I'm stuck here clearing my own apartment, you know,
Yeah.
back and forth every once in a while. So I couldn't put a number on how many times that we'd practiced. And like you said, we're not a SWAT team or Delta Force hostage rescue type guys. Despite
As much as you'd
despite
like to do
wearing the
this.
gear and wanting to be,
Yeah.
there's that subconscious, oh, I want to be a badass, but uh, we like looking at that stuff because we're just little silly war nerds, and we
Yeah.
play this silly dress up army man game called Airsoft or called Milsim. Um, so we try and practice when we can, and definitely go over footage of past events of like, hey, here's where you didn't clear your little sector here, you weren't moving right, and have that constructive criticism in making sure we're looking at our footage and trying to build each other up in what we're doing. Since we're not able to train all the time, we just go over other people's footage, our footage. We do a lot of Discord calls, just kind of like, hey, saw this video. What do y'all think about it?
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, and I
so,
mean, I love to hear you say that because I think that I'm sure there's lots of people out there who are thinking it's like, well, I can't train every week. I can't practice with my team every week. So obviously I suck or we're not good enough or we're not going to get the progress. And the reality is actually there are lots of people out there doing really good work, being really effective, and they control their controllables, right? Like you can't train every week. Great. Okay, fine. Can you do, to your point, a Discord call? Can you chat with people? Can you look at footage, right? These are all really great suggestions. If you're listening to this episode and you're thinking, oh my God, like I wish I could train like these guys do. Well, some of them don't get the chance to do that, and these are some really good ideas that they could try. So I'm glad to hear you say that. Now maybe my enthusiasm is a little premature. How did you find that worked for you guys going into the how did you find that it was actually effective?
actually, yeah, there were a lot of instances of actually contested CQB. Because if you practice on the weekends to do CQB stuff, and you're watching all these real steel guys, or even going to classes like some of our team members for real steel fundamentals, eh, if you're not contested, if there aren't actually people that you're going in to fight in a building, you think that you know what you're doing, but it isn't until the rubber meets the road of no, there's actually guys in that building, and you got to go in there and take that building, that you see where your skills actually ended up. So there were a number of instances of, because we had practiced how exactly the first man goes this way, second man goes this way, and what are all the small things that you just got to drill into your head of, how do I go in and clear a room, that actually worked out, where sure, the number one man gets shot, it's airsoft, thankfully, so he's not actually dead, but
Yeah.
me being the number two guy coming in and immediately, like, right after the first guy, and shooting whoever's in that room. And so
Hmm.
there were a number of instances like that where because we had practiced it a lot, and because it was always, front in our mind going into the event, it actually ended up working. And there's also the tried and true, just chuck a airsoft pyrotechnic grenade in the room, which we did a lot of application of that as well. So
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I'm looking forward to potentially doing that at Iron Horse next year. Who knows?
hopefully
We'll.
we'll see what the pyro situation's like with
Yeah.
our legislation here in the U.S. But
Yeah. Yeah.
hopefully you get to experience that. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, but I mean, the fundamental point of, and I've said this before on on the channel and on our podcast, like we use airsoft grenades that are not pyrotechnic; they're propane powered. I still would prefer to throw a grenade in a door rather than go in myself if I can at all avoid it, right?
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I take your point for sure. So lots of CQC action, lots of CQB action, I should say. And then overall, so you mentioned sort of this wooded area. What was that situation like?
So on the eastern side of the field, and at one portion, the woods move in between the two sites. There was a very dense, like juniper and mesquite, um, woods. So it was very if you're standing up, it's very difficult to see because it's very low canopy.
Mhm.
So if you're crouched or prone, you can see all the way through. And then eventually there was a berm by one of the roads where it had been built up to accommodate a road through the topography. We had a couple of really good engagements there where because we were laying down or because we were crouched, we actually got the drop on a number of SD squads or like small 2-man elements. Um, we didn't have much fighting in the woods. It was oftentimes we would use the woods to conceal our movement and then have an engagement in a clearing or against a road or pop out of the woods like guerrillas and go and assault a building and then scurry back in.
Mhm.
So it was a really great opportunity to do some bushwhacking because most airsofters, I would say, don't like running through thorns or dealing with branches. So we really tried to have good patrol tactics of making sure that we're staying quiet, that we're all staying a bit spread out, moving slow, staying low, and just keeping our eyes and ears open. Is that that really did well? That strategy really paid off for us at the event. There's
Were,
like I said, we got the drop. It's like full on perfect textbook ambush on SD guys multiple times because we
were
were using
you
the
cammed
woods.
up?
We were wearing Ranger green, so flat camouflage, and all of our gear was multicam, just because that's what all of us have is so common. We all have multicam. Um, so we didn't have camouflage in the like sense of actually blending with the environment very well,
Mhm.
but because we weren't moving and because we were prone, which is a very useful tactic you should use in airsoft,
Yeah.
uh, is going is going prone.
Yeah.
We actually were able to not be seen. And there's guys coming right up into the woods right at the start, looking around, and like we're sitting out there. These trees are, very thin trees. And they splay out. They're not huge trees to hide behind. There's not much
Yeah.
cover, but we're staying low and slow, and that actually, they weren't looking for that, and they didn't see us, even though we were just like these green blobs.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot to be said about like staying still and shutting your yapper as well. I think it's super important. How and that's I guess is the question I was going to ask you. Like, how do you find like the average person at an AMS game like that is the average player is in terms of like noise discipline and that kind of stuff? Like, is that something you see a fair amount, or is it closer to what you might see on a regular skirmish where people are just going around and just yapping about whatever, smoking and joking, as they say?
I would say there's a little bit more noise discipline than like a skirmish where, you've got people running around in all kinds of different bright colored kit with
Hmm.
all kinds of, like pink or neon green or yellow like stickers and stuff on their guns. So I think most people at this event had that mindset of, we need to stay a bit quiet, we need to uh, not have a huge footprint. We definitely we got a squad when we were moving out to go sneak around through the woods and take an objective. One time, we actually were trailed by 3 SD guys who they were staying really quiet, really slow. Me and another guy, we managed to see them. We were taking up rear security on our little patrol, and they were trailing us parallel like the whole time we were moving, and we lost it. Like we didn't know where they were.
Oh wow.
Turns out that they actually went behind us, took a capture point, and then me and a saw gunner, we got into a fun little engagement with them where we all traded. So it wasn't completely a positive. It was a positive experience, but we definitely all died
Yeah,
and we
the
couldn't
outcome
continue
was
the
not so
patrol.
good.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
outcome was not so good, but it was fun. So, to your original question, I definitely think most people were a bit more aware. But what we had done is we had penetrated so deep in the woods and gotten so close to SD's aid stations or their kind of close to their fob, but not within spawn camping range, that they didn't know or didn't think that we would be there because all the main fighting, you hear it going off, people shouting,
Yeah.
really loud, like HPA saws going off, artillery sims, which I didn't know would be a thing on this event, but they were pretty cool. And then grenades going off. It's like the sound of battle's over there. So they're just talking, like, shooting the shit. either, walking to the fight or kind of just like walking around somewhere else on the roads, out in the open. Whereas we're like on a berm, prone, quiet. Like we know they're coming. They don't know we're there.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter how noise disciplined they would have been if they got close to where the fighting was, because they weren't,
Yeah, that's
disciplined
right.
when we were right there.
Yeah, that's right. And so, like, were there like obviously like this seems like a more of a recon sort of situation that you were just describing, kind of like sort of what Ambo would have talked to us about what he was doing at Border War, if you're familiar with what he was saying.
Mhm.
Is that sort of the role that you were playing, or was it just basically that was what the situation called for and that's what you were doing at the time?
That was just what the situation called for. So the very first run that we did at the very start of the event, we had gotten close to the control point. We had slowed down our running to just a brisk walk to then a slow walk. And once we heard the SD guys talking pretty loudly, we went full on dead silent. Like, hey, let's set an ambush right here.
Mm-hmm.
Using hand signs that at least our guys were familiar with. And thankfully, the random squad mates that we were assigned to our guys, they were picking it up real quick. So they shut up, they got down and low, and we had a great little textbook ambush there at the start. The other two kind of big patrols that we did, or I guess three, um, were of our own volition to not recon per se, but sneak up, try and penetrate as far into their lines as possible, and avoid the city where they were, and try
Mm-hmm.
and take some of the control points behind them, or try and uh, take an aid station or contest an aid station that they were using. And whereas the majority of their team is forward deployed, we were trying to sneak around and then assault like a building and take it and hold it till we died, or take control points and assault those. So it wasn't a recon role. It was more of like a not serendipitous, a surreptitious movement to then a really frenetic, quick, violent assault of buildings or of control points.
Yeah, yeah, a very kinetic moment for you
Oh
guys.
yeah, absolutely.
Um, how did you sort of interact with the rest of the structure of your team? Like, was there a lot of like coordination? Like, hey, we're going to do this. This other, this other squad, this other platoon is then going to back us up, or like how was that coordination going, or was it even happening?
We definitely tried at AMS. It From my experience of going to 3 events now, it definitely seems like it depends on who your platoon leader is and who is above them. Like who's the XO, who's the CO, and the combat controller. Like who's at the top of the chain really will dictate how you work. And also, like your other platoon leaders or other squad leaders, do they have the mindset of, hey, squad 3 needs help, we need to go there now? Or are they saying, oh, no, we're doing our mission, they're doing theirs, and there is no communication?
Mm-hmm.
So we've had not very much communication at previous events. At this one, unfortunately, our platoon was very small. We were the largest squad. So we kind of just folded the rest of the platoon into like our squad, or into kind of like 2 squads, ours and then everyone else.
Yeah.
But our platoon leader was absolutely willing to communicate with us. We were able to get him on comms immediately. He's actually one of the, I believe he's one of the admins or part owners, maybe just admins of one of the fields in North Texas, D14. I can't remember his name, unfortunately. He was a great platoon leader. He's a sponsored player for Amped Airsoft, great guy, and he did a great job trying to coordinate and get us help from other squads or the rest of the platoon when we needed it. But it didn't really shake out that well. So
Gotcha.
there were a couple instances where we called for help and we're like, hey, we're struggling to hold this spot. We need more guys to push through this SD squad or platoon. So it's very much like every event we've been to, we'll come into situations where we're outgunned and try to ask for help and not get it. It's either because guys are tied down somewhere else or there isn't that communication, unfortunately.
Yeah, gotcha. The other thing I wanted to ask you, and this is more about like I guess your squad leadership, but also in particular your team. One of the ideas I've been toying about in my mind is doing another sort of video about like leadership in airsoft, because I think my perspective on leadership has changed a lot over the last, let's 8 years, which is the last time I did a video on this, I think. But anyways, the point of my question is, how do you arrange the leadership on your like team and maybe in the squad? Like, is there one person who's the boss, or like do you collectively make decisions on the fly with the information that's given to you, and how do you parse that?
Um, so for our team, kind of the main team founder, my friend Brandon, it's like we've been playing airsoft together for I think 14 years now. He has a whole wealth of like military knowledge beyond what I have, and I feel like I have a good amount. And so he definitely has that lead from the front, like attitude and knowledge to then disperse to the rest of our guys. So usually what we'll do for events is break up our squad. Usually he'll be the squad leader, and we'll break up amongst ourselves who will be a fire team leader. And if we have enough guys, like we did at Iron Horse, we have 2 fire teams. So usually one's an assault element, everyone's a rifleman, and the other one is a support element, and that's where we'll keep our saw. Or if we had a DMR or sniper, which we don't have, they would be the support by fire element. So that's how we would like to have it. This event, we had 5 of us, so that didn't really work very well.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll shift who the fire team leader is, so that person, they have more responsibility to direct. All right, where are my 4 guys going? And that frees Brandon, or in the future whoever else might be the squad leader, to direct everyone and also communicate with other squads or platoon, or just all of command. So that's how we usually structure it, is like squad leader, fire teams. We'll try and lump, if we have randos in our squad, we'll try and lump them into like a separate group.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on their attitudes, they may just leave and say, no, I'm here to just shoot people and I don't really care about sticking with the squad, which has happened. Or they're like, yeah, sure, I'm down, let's do it. Like, where do you want me? And those
Yeah.
are the best kind of people to play with, is like, hey, this is how we like to play. We like this really structured, like very milsim-y experience with responsibilities and who's doing what. If you like that, cool, let's roll. If you don't, that's fine too. You're here, you
Mm-hmm.
paid to be here. We would like if you rolled with us, especially if you were a medic or a saw gunner or something. We would love the support. But, if y'all are going to run off and do your thing, that's cool.
Yeah, for
It's
sure.
going to suck for you because we usually have the medic,
Yeah.
or we'll usually take the special roles so that we know that they're solid. But,
Yeah,
if
and
you want to stay,
it's
that's
gonna suck
good.
for
If
you
not,
because we're awesome. So
oh yeah,
yeah.
we're so great. You should stick with us.
But it's funny because I would suspect, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but despite having this like leadership structure, there's not a lot of like barking orders and shouting at people and like bossing people around that
Oh no,
occurs within that structure, right? Like,
no,
I
not
wouldn't
at
be
all.
shocked, and you again correct me if I'm wrong, but like Brandon, in many situations, probably doesn't even need to tell you what he wants you to do. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's pretty fair to say. Like, we're all pretty switched on, I think, especially the guys we've all been playing for like over a decade together, many of us. Is that we kind of know, like, hey, we've been doing this enough. We kind of know if this person's moved up on a door a certain way. It's like, all right, you don't even have to talk. You know what that person's thinking. Everyone else lines up, and we get it done.
Yeah.
A lot of the times, like when stuff gets really complicated, or it's really loud, and there's multiple moving pieces and other squads in the mix, it gets more difficult. And we got to talk it out, but we try not to have a whole conversation and cite our sources for why we're doing a thing, and
Yeah.
because then you get in this information like overload where you're thinking about talking and you're thinking about what people are saying and you're not doing. So we do try and like do first, talk a
Yeah. That.
little, try and get on the same page beforehand, and then just go.
Yeah. What it was saying, like, why use lot word when few word do trick? It's like, yeah,
Exactly. Yes.
yeah. So let's go. Let's come back to Reindeer Games in particular. So you're taking the berm, you're fighting, you're guerrilla tactics, like coming out of the woods, like doing all this kind of stuff. Is that basically the summation of the action on the first day for you guys until you roll into the night portion?
For the beginning of the day, we had our first little run, and then we spent a couple of hours at Elijah, which was the closer mount site to our fob. We got pushed back pretty hard the first day, so we were just trying to hold on ground and not get stuck in the fob, which that kind of happened to us at Iron Horse this year. Was on UFS, we got stuck in the fob, whereas the morning of Saturday, we were trying to stop that from happening. It's not very fun. So we were in the city for a lot of the day, and then eventually we went out and we're like, all right, we're going around. We got to change it up. We're hitting them somewhere else. We went on a couple of those little patrols out, and then once it started getting close to nighttime, I'm not sure if this was by the game staff or if it just naturally happened this way, but most of the SD guys pulled back from Elijah and were at Boaz or at their fob. So maybe they were just running and gunning so hard they got tired and were taking a break, which is totally cool. But if your whole team does it at once, we're going to take both cities, which we pretty much did, or we got into Boaz right when it was starting to get dark. So all 4 of our guys in our squad all had night vision, and we kept it on us, either on the helmet or in a pouch. And we're like, let's go. Like, we don't need to come back to the fob. It's sunset soon. Let's push out, see what happens. It's going to get dark. Put the nods on and stay in the field. And so we were very close to or on the outskirts of Boaz as it was getting dark. So we did manage to push back all the way as SD was either being withdrawn or taking a break. I still don't know what that was about, but we did manage to push them, or we did manage to take all of Elijah, the woods, and start going into Boaz. And that's where the night fighting started, was more on their side of the field.
And so, if I'm understanding correctly, like you were pushed pretty far downfield with your nods all ready to go when the night fight started, I guess. Mm-hmm. So they probably didn't expect you to be that far forward, ready to engage them, I would suspect, right?
I think so. And definitely shout out to a lot of the cost guys who did not have night vision. They definitely stayed in the fight when it was dark and they couldn't see. And they were good sports about it for the most part. All the guys we were running with that did not have night vision were like, all right, cool. Where are they? I can't see them, but point them out and then I'll white light them and we'll work together and find a way. Mm-hmm. So we had a lot of really good fighting as soon as it got dark. And then once we died, I think we died around 7:30. We were tired and we were like, hey, the guys who quit early on our squad, they were back at our camp cooking. So we're like, all right, you know what? Let's go back there. We had a great fight. We don't have to play till 9, but we did fight like right there, kind of further towards Boaz, and that was a good time.
So you mentioned something that's interesting to me as well about the nods and white light stuff, and I'm just curious, like, and maybe this is applicable for us at Iron Horse. I don't know, you tell me. But like, how, as someone who's nods capable, working with people in on your team and your immediate team members who are nods incapable, right? How do you actually work that? Because you mentioned, like, just point them out to me and I'll white light them and we'll work. Like, how does that actually work in practice? Like, how effective did you find it? And like, what were you doing specifically?
So one thing that's really simple to do, even if you do have night vision, but let's say it's in the daytime and you're in a dark tunnel or a really dark room, is you have someone who's white lighting, like do a little blip of the white light real quick to see who they are, because the camo for this event was SD wearing dark, Cost wearing dark green or like green camos, which have a lot of black and brown in them. So positively identifying who you're shooting at was very difficult without first doing a little blip of white light. So you'd get someone, they'd move off to the side of the squad, and then just hit them with a quick little hit of the white light to just see who they are. And if they're bad, they're going to shoot it where that white light was. And everyone else is off to the sides with night vision, not doing any lasers, not doing any illuminators or flashlights. And they're just hoping to God that their hop-up's dialed in and shooting at the bad guys that they just saw. Or, because you can also see the silhouettes, because how you are silhouetted against foliage is that oftentimes the foliage is really bright or is a solid color almost, or solid pattern, and there's a silhouette moving in front of it that you can see with night vision that you can't see with the naked eye.
Right.
So we'd have guys with the white lights move off to the side, hit them with the white light, everyone starts shooting, turn the white light off, and then move out of the way. So white light to see where they are, shoot at them, move, because they're going to shoot it where the light was. Or also have someone with white light who does not have nods at the back of the squad when you're moving, so that they can like follow you, because they'll be able to see your silhouette. Or what we did, a different event was put they're called cat eyes. It's like a little glow in the dark tape, I believe, on the backs of our helmets so that people could follow us. Or you do a really small chem light and you tape it up so that there's only a small little sliver of light showing, and you put it in the back of your plate carrier or the back of your helmet or somewhere that you're only going to see it from directly behind you, so they can follow you. And then we'd also have the white light guys just move off to the sides to draw the fire, to be able to have constant white light on, so that the people with night vision who their night vision isn't auto gated, they're either gonna have to try and adjust it and fumble with it, turn it up, or not be able to see because there's this bright light right on them. So it worked out pretty well. A lot of the times it was just there's guys on there's teammates, like cost guys, who are white lighting, and we would just move off to the side and be like, all right, well, let's let them have that engagement where they're getting focused down, and we'll move around and do something else. So we did a lot of like sneaking around, avoiding the light of the SD and cost guys, and just trying to stay in the shadows, stay still. So we had a lot of engagements where the attention was drawn somewhere else, and our guys with nods were able to just move quietly or just quickly around and engage someone from somewhere where they weren't paying attention to, because they were focused on the bright shiny light over there. So like moths to a flame, they're like, oh, there's white light over there, I have nods, I can see that person, let me kill them. And you don't see the people who are being light disciplined off to your side.
Right. Well, and I would suspect as well, like, you guys have guys on your team who are nods incapable, but most likely they also have guys who are nods incapable. So if they see a white light, they're going to be, well, I can see that, so I'm going to shoot at it too,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So the double whammy for sure. That's a really interesting way of thinking about those particular situations and how you could sort of shape that engagement by, using what you expect people. Like, it's a very tactical, like almost strategic mindset that you have to adopt with that. But yeah, it makes sense.
We also
So
had a couple of people, and this was an interesting little tidbit, because we were happy to work with guys on cost or on our squad who did not have nods, and we're like, yeah, just make sure you're not backlighting us, and just stay off to the side, and we'll spread out a bit, and we'll still roll together, and that's we'll work it out, and we'll try and be slow, and make sure where we are, because you can't see us. And we'll have a good time. We did have some guys come up to us and they're like, hey guys, where are they? Let's roll. And then they see that we have night vision, and they're like, oh, y'all are night vision guys, I'll leave y'all alone. Which was a very odd experience. It was the first time it happened to me playing airsoft, doing that. It's like, thank you for, I guess, being considerate to not white light around me so I can actually use my night vision, but we would have been happy to have you run with us.
yeah.
So little interesting tidbit there.
Yeah, well, I think the point there is, I could totally see someone being in that mindset of like, oh, these guys are super serial because they have, their very expensive nods. So I don't want to go and interfere with whatever their fun is going to be, rather than thinking what sort of my natural reaction, and maybe this is just me, but be like, okay, how can I make sure that we both now have maximum fun, right? Not just be like, okay, you do your own thing. It's like, yes, let's get you to do your own thing, but also like, it would be really cool for me to roll with someone with nods. How can I help you so that we can make that happen? Right.
Yeah,
That's
yes
how I would approach it. Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's yes. And it's like, cool. You guys have night vision. Okay. You tell me what I need to do to not mess up your thing, and I'll see how I can fit into that to make sure that you're, more effective or whatever. Because fundamentally, if it's night or day or whatever, that BB is going to tag someone out just as well as any other BB, right? If it's coming from a nods gun or not, right? So Yeah, that's a really interesting dynamic, but I can totally see that happening too. Plus, you see some guy wearing like 12 grand worth of kit or whatever. If they've got his night vision, which costs I don't know what, like $1,500, and then they're wearing UF Pro pants, which cost like $1 million. They're looking at you going like, oh my god, like this guy's way too intense for me. I
Hmm.
can also kind of see that. So
Yeah,
that's
and we're not
that's
trying to put out that impression of, oh yeah, we're the cool guys and
totally,
we
yeah.
got night vision and we're better than you. It's like you just have different capabilities that, it's a hobby we love and we're willing to spend the money to get that capability, but we're still willing to work with people. So I guess I'd say for people who don't have night vision or aren't ever planning on getting it, it's like definitely, try and find the people that do have it that are not, assholes about it.
Yeah, totally. But and it's fair. I think it says a lot more about that individual than it says about you. I think you guys like are probably great to come up to and be like, "Hey, how's it going?" and have a chat or do whatever. But they don't necessarily know that. They just assume
Yeah.
that, oh yeah, these guys don't want to roll, right? So, but now if they're listening to this podcast, they know, a safety kill wants to roll. So there you go.
Yeah, well, no, we'll roll with people. It's like just let us know what your expectations for your weekend are going to be. And that was something that we did at this event that was new, is talking to our randos and be like, hey, y'all came here, you paid for this event, you have expectations in your mind about how it's going to go. What are those?
Hmm.
And let's try and work with that. If you want to go off and do your own thing, cool. We're sticking together as a squad of 5 guys. We would love to have the rest of y'all. Like, do y'all want to be in the city? Do y'all want to be in the woods? Do y'all like, what do y'all want to do? And let's figure it out. What are your expectations? We'll try and accommodate them, and
Yeah,
try and all be good sports. It's a big community, and I think we as a team, and I think actually most people in this event really went into it with a good hearts and good sportsmanship and a mind of, we're going to have fun at this event no matter what, and we're going to be good sports about it the whole time. So that
that's
was a very
awesome.
remarkable change from many of the events I've been to. Was this one was one of the most fun because people were such good sports the whole time on both teams, and that was great to see.
Hmm. Yeah, and I mean, it makes such a difference. And what you're just talking about too, this idea of like level setting with the other players, I mean, like, what are your expectations? I mean, it's such a good example of like this sort of like ad hoc leadership, right? Like in that situation, you are not their boss, you're not their leader, you're just there, you're just there, but you have this experience and you're showing up with the intent of being like, okay, these are the things that we want to do. And so you're leading by example, basically, by
Hmm.
saying, hey, like this is what we want to do. What do you want to do? Let's figure out a way to make it work. And like that's a really great example of leadership, because once you've established that and you've established to them that you're willing to work with them, and like it makes it a lot easier for them to as well go along with anything that you might suggest, because they've agreed to it, right? They're like,
Hmm.
oh, I told Nick that I was good. I was good to roll. Well, now he needs me to roll. He tells me to do this thing. I'm going to do it because that's what we both agreed to, right? So really, I'm super stoked to hear about that, because I think thinking about forward to June when we're at Iron Horse, like that's going to be really important, because we're going to be showing up as a crew of a lot of people from the Discord at time of recording. At least one full squad. It might be two squads, right? And everyone is gonna have different expectations, right? Like my expectations, having never played an AMS event. Frosty coming from Australia, having played 18 games of airsoft total, right? Like we're all coming to the table with different stuff, and it's important to you just collaborate. So, anyways, I digress. Um, so you did, you got schwacked at the night game. You went home, did some barbecue, which we're also going to do. I think
Oh
that's going to
yeah,
be looking
I'm gonna
forward to
make
that.
sure that y'all at least play a little bit in the dark, not the whole
Yeah,
time, but a little bit. You
at
got you got
least,
to try
yeah,
it. You got to try it.
for sure. Yeah, and I'll make sure not to look through anybody's night vision. I promise. Um, so so then the next day, like, what was the turnout the next day? Because I keep hearing about this at events where the next day, like, half the players leave or whatever.
It there definitely was some attrition. I think a lot of people just really went all out Saturday and were just so pooped Sunday. They're like, you know what? I live an hour down the road. I'm just gonna go home. I had a great time. It was worth the
Mm-hmm.
money. Cool. Uh, they're definitely the amount evened out. I think. I believe Saturday there were a little bit more CR Dynamics guys than cost. At the morning formation Sunday morning, it seemed a lot more even, although diminished. So we definitely had some attrition on cost. But for the most part, it was even. Thankfully,
Hmm.
it wasn't like, oh, our whole team had a horrible day Saturday, so now there's 40 versus 200. That didn't happen. It was pretty even.
And so it was just the second day was just more of the same, or did you switch sides, or like how did the
Uh,
second day shake out?
so second day, um, cost actually got to forward deploy, and that was something that was a bit of a random call on AMS's part of, hey, let's have all the cost guys forward deploy to both Elijah and Boaz, and we'll see what's up from there. And they talked about it in the raffle and kind of the post game big hubbub, or and for the most part, everyone seemed to enjoy it.
Hmm.
Bo, one of the head guys at AMS, he's asking like, "Hey, we're trying something new. Did y'all like it?" Most people said, "Yeah." I thought we had fun because we got to actually go see Boaz and have some engagements there. Um, and then we did get pushed back through the day a little bit till we kind of were about, I think, at the halfway point. And then later in the day, Sunday, most people had quit, so it was kind of just like sparse little engagements all across the AO. But in the morning, we got to venture out much further than we had before.
Right. And so, like, how does like I guess I'm trying to think about what the ending of that event must be like, where you start with like so many people, and then it sort of fizzles out to like 50 or 60 people left on the field at the end of the day, sort of situation.
Sometimes there was one big like last battle. Not like a Milsim West where literally everyone has an all-out battle till the very last minute, which is pretty common. There was one big engagement on the outskirts of Elijah where most people on our team, or at least our squad and our team, were low on ammo, and so we were like, guys, we got 30 minutes left. Everyone just shoot a bunch over there. We're gonna throw smoke and run through the open and assault this tree line, and probably all die, but we're gonna have fun. And that was kind of our like, all right, we're kind of done with the event. Let's do one last big thing and call it a weekend. So that's
Right
what
on.
we did. So a lot of SD and cost guys died in that big little engagement, uh, and then just called it there. And then as we were walking back to the fob to clean up and get our stuff out, we saw a couple small engagements on the way. So some people, they were fine having those small engagements, but I think most people were like, all right, there's one big last battle, let's do it. And
Yeah.
I think it ended pretty well.
So what was your like biggest, most fun moment of the weekend? Like, what was the most memorable thing for you?
Oh wow. Um, one of them was actually like playing with the night vision that I own, because I've rented before, but it was kind of a different thing of like, oh, this is mine, and I get to actually like play with it for the first time. That was great, but we had a lot of really good engagements. Like I said, in the woods, I think that was really memorable. Was having these great engagements, setting these ambushes, and then immediately like ambushing the squad that's walking by. They run off to the other side of the road, and we assault across the road, and kill everyone there, take the capture point, and then scurry back into the woods and go somewhere else. It was as great as an AO as it is with the city. We had a lot of fun bushwhacking and assaulting stuff from the trees. Like that was great. Um, so maybe next time we do more stuff in the buildings, but for me that was a lot of fun.
Was there one thing in particular that you did specifically, you as an individual, that you were like, I felt like a total badass when I did this?
Oh yeah. So that those three SD guys that I had mentioned who are tailing our patrol, I had gone out on my own with like a very ragtag group. Our platoon leader grabbed like a bunch of random people and said, "Hey, we're going deep behind the lines. We're gonna go capture all these capture points. Who's with us?" All of my guys were like thirsty and just they needed a break. So I was like, "I'm gonna pound this liquid IV. eat a granola bar, and I'm like, I'm ready to go. I'm loaded up. Let's go. We go out on this little patrol, and me and a saw gunner, we're sticking behind because we're like, no, we can hear them. They're behind us. The guys in front of us, they disappear out in the woods. They get in an engagement and go off. And it's me and one guy, and we're by one of the capture points, and we're just like laying there, sitting there waiting. And we can hear them. They had shot at some of our guys who ran off. And we're waiting. And they start to like capture the flag. And somehow my saw gunner guy, he died. And so it was me and 3 SD guys. And so I'm laying down. Like these guys are like crouching and they're walking around, and I can see their little feet underneath the trees. And I nail the first guy who's crouched. The second guy is prone, and I barely see him. And we get into a very fun little not stereotypical, but very typical airsoft engagement where your hop ups are both going over each other's heads.
Yep.
And so it's basically like you have to point in the dirt and let the hop up
Just
hit the
take it.
guy.
Yeah.
I felt a little bad because I'm pretty sure I hit him in the face. And then I see that my saw gunner guy's dead. I'm like, oh no. And I'm like, I got 2 of them, but I play games like Tarkov. There's always a third. There's always another guy.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, whatever. I'm alone. I'm gonna die probably. And I run out in the open, run to the control point, and I see the 2 guys that are dead, and I see a third guy off in the trees not looking at me. And I'm shooting at him, and as I'm shooting at him, I just see this grenade like arc from the woods
Oh
and
no.
land, and I'm like, oh no. And I like try and backpedal. I probably should have just turned around and ran. I kill the guy who threw the grenade. It blows up. It kills me. Maybe it was a little bit, maybe I was outside of the range. Maybe not. Called it. And then we had a great little chat with the 3 SD guys. And that was a fun engagement for me. I was like, no, I'm
Awesome.
pretty sure I was outside of the range of that grenade. I would have lived.
Yeah.
But I
Better to
called it
call
to be a
it.
good
Yeah.
sport, and
Yeah,
that
totally.
was fun. We had a little memorable little moment, laughed about it, handed out gummy worms.
Yeah. Makes good memories for the other party too. Hey, it's like, we had this awesome engagement. I threw the grenade. He shot me, but I got him. Sort of.
Oh yeah,
That's yeah.
it was a good. They were out in the woods for like 2 hours, like doing a real long like flank around,
Oh
and then they
wow.
followed us back, and so it was a good little coup de grace for their patrol, and they could finally go back to the fob and get water.
Yeah. So the other question, I mean, I always ask this question, but like, what was the biggest learning that you took away from this, either you personally or just with your teammates?
We had a lot of gear issues at this event, and usually that's not the case. One of our guys, like his pistol holster fell apart like as he was running, so it's like those screws needed to be Loctited, stuff needed to get strapped down. My camera mount broke right at the start, and I was because honestly I think of poor design. A small little piece fell out of it. I probably should have taped it over so it wouldn't fall out. I didn't think
Mm-hmm.
that it would fall out, and so I learned that lesson. And so I couldn't record the entire weekend because my GoPro mount just like would not work anymore because of this one little piece. Cameras weren't charged, batteries weren't all charged. It was very like we needed to have our gear more squared away for this event. We had a great time regardless, and all of our guns worked. Thankfully, we had backups for the guns that didn't chrono or didn't work. And last but not least, probably the most important one for me was don't work on your guns the night before or the week before. I was trying to upgrade our squad LMG that we all pitched in for to bull gear box mags, and it has a lot more fiddling to do than I had originally thought. So that did not work, and we
Yeah.
were down a saw for the event. So those yeah, mostly gear related. But I think we executed the missions that we set out to do pretty well. Most of the times when we were beaten back was because it was just a ton of SD guys. So in terms of tactics, in terms of strategy for the weekend, it's all pretty good. But gear, it's always
Yeah,
It's
it's
always the
always the
gear.
way. That's the thing. I mean, to be honest, like traveling to Iron Horse, like that's the one part that I'm sort of like nervous about because it's like if anything happens with my gear, like my, because I mean, I'm not obviously taking my airsoft replicas, but everything else is coming, and like I don't necessarily plan on bringing a spare, like a spare helmet or spare like I'm gonna have spare like consumables like batteries and like GoPro mounts and stuff like that,
Hmm.
but. For the rest of it, like if my plate carrier or not my plate, my chest rig falls apart or my like flat pack falls apart, I'm planning on having a spare, so it's gonna have to be. I mean, it's gonna be not that finding tactical gear down your way is quite as difficult I expect as finding it where I live. But regardless, yeah,
Yeah. Well, we should have spares enough for however many people there are that are coming. So like sounds like there's like 30 or 40 or I don't know, like the whole server pretty much.
yeah.
We'll have
Well,
enough gear for y'all.
yeah. Well, it's all the players and then all their like plus ones and their teammates and stuff, right? So it's regardless, it's going to be interesting. Well, I'm really grateful you took the time to talk to me about Reindeer Games. It certainly sounds like perhaps because it's not one of the like premier events that you typically hear about, like Copperhead or Iron Horse. People have a much better attitude, and it leads to much more casual and fun. Maybe it's right before Christmas as well. It could also have something to do with it. I don't know, but I'm glad you had a really good time, and I'm glad that the lessons that you learned weren't too hard, like with respect to your gear, and didn't prevent you from having success with your team overall. So that's wicked.
Yeah, no, it was a good event, and we're definitely going to go back next year.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad to hear it. Well, Nick, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us about this today. I'm really grateful. Um, Guys, thank you so much for listening. This is going to be the last episode before the holidays. There's going to be an episode next week. It will be something a little bit different, just to tide you over during the holiday weekends, so I can have a bit of time off as well as the holidays come over. But thank you so much for listening. Happy holidays to all of you, and we will talk to you next time. Take care.